Hi everyone, and welcome again to Art with Nathan. We're going to continue our series on fundamentals of drawing. And this episode will conclude the basics of drawing. It's not everything that we could cover when we talk about drawing, but these are the basics. So we've been exploring drawing with a linear instrument like a pen. For this last lesson, we're going to show how diverse a line that we can make with pens, just showing how we can make an array of textures just using a marker. And now this is actually a task that we were given in our second year of studies. We had to present a sheet of different textured marks, all variety, as many as we possibly could. And this is just developing your toolbox in terms of drawing. If you can portray a whole bunch of different textures, different variety of textures, it's really important to do this. It's a fun exercise. I'm going to show you how I went out about it. Again, I'm using my whiteboard marker. And just a fun story, the student who got the highest marks in my class doing this task, she attached her pen to a Dremel tool, which is like a drill, and she made the most unique marks the lecturers had ever seen using this thing. She destroyed her pen and half destroyed her paper, but they'd never seen anything like this, and she got the highest marks. And it's not something I would suggest you replicate. You want to be drawing with your hand. It's just a kind of idea what goes down in art school. All right, so if you see here, just looking over my shoulder, I've drawn a grid. Okay, you can draw a grid on a piece of paper, however big you want, and challenge yourself to fill each square with a different kind of mark. So I'm going to start out with just a very simple hatch. Okay, so this will be my first square. Real easy, going to ease into it. And we're going to start creating variety. Okay, my next square is going to be a crosshatch. Okay, so really I'm just using what we've learned. And very quickly you'll see we begin to run out of ideas. And that's a good thing. You challenge yourself. If it gets uncomfortable, drawing, that's good. You're pushing. Lean into that feeling. You're being challenged, you're being stretched, you're being grown. Okay. The next one I'm going to do is like a scratchy mark. And I'm going to try vary my directional line as I go along. There we go. So it's kind of like fur. So this will work as a rubric of textured marks that you make. So what a lot of artists do is they keep this. They keep it as a little insert in their sketchbook, so you can cut it out, you put it in there, and you refer to it when you kind of get stuck, when you're not too sure what to do next. I like that mark. Let me try them in a single direction, and I'm going to try and make it go from light to dark, so as if it was fur. So if you have a look, I put emphasis at the beginning of the mark and flick it. It's different from if I had just drawn a line like that. Do you see that? It's got a sense of movement. So touch is really important. How you touch your marker, your instrument on a paper, it becomes a thing. Marlene Dumas, who's a famous South African painter, said that drawing and painting is a trace of human touch. And the famous South African artist Robert Hodgins said that every mark you make, whether it's on a piece of paper, on a canvas, represents who you are, your totality, everything you are on the mark. And he often said, try your best to not misrepresent yourself in that. He was very much against things like a lazy mark or things like a misplaced mark. That's how artists think. I quite like that. I'm going to try play around with different kind of linear elements here, overlapping in the beginning. And think to yourself as you make these marks, what possible surface could this be depicting? Perhaps it could be striations in a piece of wood. That's actually not a bad idea. Let's try and do that. It could be a textured mark of a textile or a surface. So we're not drawing anything in particular, and always is something that you want to display as an art. This is purely exercise. Okay, think about it, this is just practice. I'm going to repeat this design over here. So there's my knots for the wood. But I want to be able to add an element of tone. I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so I've badly repeated. So let's say this is on a cube, and the cube has the next facet ends about here. How would I depict tone? I'm going to add a hatch mark on the one side. So I can see how that works. So there would be a lighter side if it was a wooden cube and a darker side. Okay, that's also something really good to play around with. And you can play around with even pattern marks. So I'm imagining like maybe a rock surface or a face. This could even be tiny wrinkles in the crooks of your granny's eye. This is also a really good thing to do if you're a graphic designer. So often what's missing from graphic design is a sense of texture. We have a lot of flat colors and shallow depths. So often it's a result of the tools that they have to use, the computers. The computers are just so good at portraying that kind of thing. But I really do feel there's a lot of texture and noise missing from graphic design. So if you're a graphic designer and you're improving your drawing skills, you're watching this channel, this is a great thing to implement into your design. You'll stand out, it'll be unique. And they can be quite clean too. They don't have to be, I'm thinking of like a dandelion here. They don't have to be messy necessarily, especially if you're illustrators. Illustrators don't like to make too much of a mess. They like to keep things clean. We have all these different facets in the art world. We artists aren't really afraid to make a mess. In fact, we're encouraged to do that. Okay, I'm going to try just more repeating patterns, but as I go I'm going to intentionally distort the pattern. Let's see what happens. Alright, let's try some scribbles. Scribbles are actually quite hard to do. I mean, often we see children doing it. But as you get older, it's very hard to betray your sense of pattern and rhythm. To be completely random and chaotic becomes more difficult. The children are very good at that. They were worth observing. I'm going to take that pattern to the next level. I'm going to try to repeat these circles. I also would suggest whatever tool you use to create this, that you're not precious about that particular tool, because so often you'll mess up the nib in creating this rubric for yourself. Another technique that is not often used, I think because it takes so long and this kind of noise can be quite annoying, is dots. Although I have used dots in my drawing, especially to create texture and pattern and value in smaller areas, and it is extremely effective. In fact, I've used it to a point with a pen drawing to create something that looks quite photographic, was dots. So I'm going to make them more dense as I come down, just to show you. how you can create value with dots. So it works the same way as hatching. Where the hatch marks are thicker and closer together, it portrays a darker value or tone. Where they are further apart and more spread out, they become lighter. There are artists out there who only use dots to portray value. And there are even some artists whose entire painting practice is centered around different colored dots. It's a technique called pointillism. As you see, it takes some patience. But I promise you, this is way better than scrolling on Instagram. At least you're doing something. The aim here really is to try to create as much diverse textures as possible. And this also is a huge aid into discovering your style of drawing. What does your drawing look like? You know, I would ask the question, what does a Nathan Fearon drawing look like? What tools in my toolbox do I prefer to use? So this is a part of discovering it. It's a very good practical way to do that. Okay, so I'm going to try using thick and thin lines. Okay. In one direction. So I can imagine folds of a curtain looking like this. It's a nice break from the dots. And I'm going to try curved lines for my final square. Maybe you'd be portraying waves or ripples in a pool or the petals of a rose in this way, whatever it might be. So just to clarify, this is more than that exercise you do in primary school where you went and got rubbings from bark or from cement. This is you creating your own textures. We're not making transfers of textures. So a big part is just getting over the fact that this feels like a childish exercise, you know, maybe very basic. This is very important to do this. So what I would like you to do is do exactly what I have done. Create a rubric for yourself of a whole variety of textures. And I guarantee you'll discover something new, some technique or some form of line that you feel is absolutely comfortable, that feels right. Then select something from here and try use it as the value system for drawing and see what happens. We've drawn a few objects, we've drawn a few masses. Maybe repeat one of the exercises and try and incorporate as many of these textures as you can. And it's a big learning, and cut this out and stick it in the front or the back of your sketchbook. And you can always go back and refer to it. Because what we don't want to do is get caught in a trap of making the same kind of mark, repeating the same kind of mark. Then your art becomes boring, becomes generic, it becomes mundane. You want to keep it exciting. So mark making is one of the fundamental parts of drawing, and being able to portray different textures. Okay. And really enjoy this exercise, really have fun, take your time, try and make each square as different from the last as possible. Now, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching this. Remember to like, share and subscribe. I'll see you next time.